Another episode of Technical Knockout, the MMA podcast. We are going to be talking about UFC 305 as well as the upcoming Cannonier versus Borralho. I believe that is at the Apex. Yes, it is. So first off, let's talk about the most important thing that's happened is UFC 305. Dricus du Plessis defending his belt against Israel Adesanya by submission in the fourth round. And that pretty much means also that du Plessis has beaten every middleweight champion in the post-Bisping Rockhold era besides Alex Pereira. Beating Strickland in his last fight, beating Israel on Saturday, and beating Robert Whittaker right before the Strickland fight. So, I mean, it seems like we are sort of entering a new era here at middleweight, and that era being the Messi du Plessis era, the herky-jerky movement, the crazy, dogged aggressiveness, and pretty consummate, professionally sound grappling game at the base of it. So we saw du Plessis versus Adesanya. It shook out similar to how we were talking about on the on the preview pod, me and Matt. Du Plessis had the grappling advantage. He pushed forward. Israel was given a lot of opportunities to counter-strike, and he looked really good, honestly. Israel looked good. I thought he looked good in his loss. I thought he won at least one or two rounds before the fourth round, but it did seem like the tide was starting to turn in his favor before the finish. That being said, du Plessis was able to, never get deterred how we know him to be. And, this is something we've talked about with Bilal Muhammad as well, is that these guys are they're such dogs. You are not going to rattle them, and they're not going to be dissuaded from their game plan, even if it doesn't work initially. So great job there by du Plessis. I think he, had a phenomenal game plan of pushing Israel back to the fence, pumping out that double jab, pumping out the double right hand at times too, and throwing up that lead leg. We talked about it a little bit before, but his kicking game is kind of underrated, Dricus, and he invites people to take him down with that lead leg dexterity because his grappling game is so dominant. All that being said, the fight was sort of a slow boil. Not a boring fight by any means, but definitely not like a crazily, war. It wasn't it didn't get fight of the night. It wasn't a war, but it was definitely a fight where I think we saw both styles have success, and ultimately, du Plessis was the man who got his hand raised at the end of the night. So great job by Dricus. For Adesanya, I'm really not sure where he goes from here. I think he can fight, maybe any of these top 5 middleweights and have a pretty good jab at it, but honestly, it kind of feels like he's not going to get back to the title again. A man of his star power, a man of his stature, he definitely could. He could work his way back for sure. Especially with the pull he has as far as public interest is, but I just don't see him competing with du Plessis or Strickland in a rematch he might have a good chance at, but he lost that fight very fair and square, and I just think it's going to be a while until we see him at the top. So I wouldn't be upset to see Israel retire, or at least just take some fun fights, maybe go up to light heavyweight and take a couple fun fights there. But, yeah, I think it's over for his title reign aspirations. As far as du Plessis goes, keep doing what you're doing. I think they'll probably give him Sean Strickland. I think they talked about it before the fight. But, in the event that they give it to Whittaker versus Chimaev winner, which I personally would rather see, I think he has a good chance against any one of those three guys. So, even though we criticize him, all the MMA media criticizes du Plessis for his style, and they say that he doesn't look like he knows what he's doing, and he looks like, an idiot out there bumbling over and all that shit. But the guy is a really good fighter, and he's a very well-rounded fighter. So I think he's got a great chance against anybody at the top. That being said, every dog has his day, so, I don't see him holding the belt for 8-9 defenses, but I think he can definitely get another 2 or 3. That being said, pretty solid fight at the top of the card there. Not a huge barn burner like we said, but a solid fight where both styles really shined well, and the better man came out on top. Going down to the co-main event, Kai France versus Steve Erceg. Man, I got this one wrong. I thought Erceg was going to be able to keep Kai at the end of his punches. I thought he was going to be able to pop that jab out, threaten the elbow, or threaten the hook if Kai came in too recklessly. And use his grappling as well. But unfortunately, he didn't really get a chance to do much of that because Kai caught him pretty early with that right hand. He landed it earlier in the round off of I think it was either a body jab or a throwaway jab to the face. But he just, he caught him with like this weird wide angle right overhand, and that's kind of been like his knockout punch. So it's not necessarily a surprise to see him land it because that is the punch that he lands best. But when he first landed it, a minute or two into the fight, I was like, oh, fuck. Like, Erceg's probably... I mean, like, if you're getting hit with it early like that, if Kai can line it up more properly in the next exchange or the one after that, there's a good chance he's going to hurt you or knock you out, And unfortunately, that's what happened to Steve Erceg. Kai was able to slip off of the jab and throw that big wild overhand and catch Erceg slipping. And then it was just, Erceg was on Queer Street, and he threw a few more punches and finished down on the ground. And, it sucks to see it because I really do like Steve Erceg. I like Kai France as well, but I feel like Erceg has a much better chance at the current, much better stab at the current champion in Pantoja. I feel like Kai France will probably get dog walked by Pantoja if they fight. But that being said, I think it's a great fight to make. So they'll probably end up doing that next. I think Amir Albazi is fighting Brandon Moreno, or he's injured or something like that. But either way, Tyra is fighting Royval. Asakura is coming into the UFC as well, and Moreno and Albazi are kind of waiting in the wings. So I think Kai France probably should be on a 4 or 5 fight win streak, right? Or at least a 2 fight win streak, rather, because he did get finished by Moreno. But I think a lot of people agree that he won that Albazi fight. And now, after knocking out the last title challenger and Steve Erceg, a guy who put up a really good fight for the belt, I think it just makes all sense in the world to get him that title shot. So hopefully they can do that by the end of the year, if not at the beginning of next year. But I think that's a good fight to make for sure. So going down the card again, Dan Hooker versus Mateusz Gamrot, man, that was a very fun fight. Dan Hooker looked incredible, man. We talked about it on the preview pod that, he has a really good chance of winning this fight, if not by finish, by threatening the finish in every position. And he did just that, man. I mean, it was a split decision. It was a close fight, but I personally felt like Hooker did enough to win. Gamrot had a great showing too. Wasn't really able to get the wrestling off as much as he normally does, but he did show some good wrinkles in his striking, and I think that's something that he's been criticized a lot for in the past. So I'm happy to see him kind of round that out. When he did get to the grappling exchanges, Hooker was able to threaten that guillotine if he went on the outside, like he does. Gamrot typically will shoot for the head outside double or even the low leg single with his head on the outside, similar to like Khabib almost. In that entry, not in his top game, obviously. But every time Gamrot would go down the middle for the double, Gamrot would threaten the knees or threaten the uppercut, and anytime he went for his head on the outside, he would try to wrap up the guillotine. And it was a great way to deter the wrestling from Gamrot. When he did get in those positions and Hooker threatened the guillotine, he would have to, gator roll or turn out of it, and that just, brought them back to the feet, where Hooker was landing some good stuff from the outside. Nice jabs, nice front kicks. He had a really good body punch. I think in the second or third round, he was finding a home for it. So a solid performance from Hooker. Takes the top 5 spot from Gamrot. And they're talking about making him versus Charles Oliveira next. I think that's an awesome fight. I'd like to see that. If not, him versus Justin Gaethje makes all the sense in the world as well. I think that'd be an awesome war. I kind of feel bad for Hooker in that fight, but I think it's a good comeback fight for Gaethje after getting knocked out by Holloway. And for Gamrot, I mean, just steady the course, keep fighting these guys. There's a lot of dudes at the top that he can contend with, and I think he has a style that gives a lot of people fits. So, I do feel like he's a good matchup for Islam, Sarukian as well. But, now obviously he's going to have to take a step down after that. I don't know, man. Maybe they give him John Silva or something if John Silva wants to stay at lightweight. Maybe they give him the winner of Moicano versus Benoit Saint Denis. I think that would be a good fight, too. Yeah, I mean, good problems to have at lightweight for sure, as there usually is. Now going to a more shittier and sloppier division at heavyweight, we had Jairzinho Rozenstruik beat Tai Tuivasa in what was the craziest split decision I've ever seen. One of the judges scored at 30-27 for Tai. It was absolutely insane. They removed him from duties for the rest of the night, which I thought was a great gesture because the guy clearly either didn't know what he was watching or was incredibly biased, or both. So anyway, yeah, as far as the actual fight goes, it was pretty much what you'd expect from Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Although he wasn't able to find the knockout or even really hurt Tai much, he was able to deter his advances over and over with that jab. He was able to land the leg kicks as well. And then when Tai did come crashing in, he would just duck and throw an overhand and kind of, catch him coming in. Tai side, it was honestly very, I don't want to say depressing, but it was pretty hard to watch because it seemed like he would just, he would wade in with his hands up, try to get Jairzinho to the fence, and then whenever he did get him to the fence, he would go wild and try to knock his head off. And if you're fighting a good counter striker like Jairzinho, you really need to build the offense to those blitzes. You can't just blitz in wild like that. I would have loved to have seen some feints, some leg kicks, just a jab, anything. Not be so honest in your approach, because when he did come in that honestly, he got punched in the face by Jairzinho with that wild overhand counter that we just talked about. So, I mean, good performance from Jairzinho. I would have liked to see him get the finish here, but it is what it is. I think he had a solid fight. And I think the decision prop was a good one to cash for sure. Carlos Prates looked incredible against Li Jingliang, handing him his first knockout loss. Sucks to see the Leech go down like that, but this guy Prates seems to be a real problem at welterweight. He's very long, very strong in the weight class. We haven't really seen his wrestling get tested that well, but he's been putting people out, man. And I think one of the few guys who has knockouts with these new gloves on. I think he has 2 of them now. But the guy is putting in the work, and I'm excited to see how he comes up to the top because his hands look incredible. His kicks look super fast, and you can just tell from when he touches people, the way that they react, they're getting hit hard as fuck. So the dude has a very bright future. I'm excited to see where it goes for the Leech. I mean, I think it's old man fight time or retirement time. Maybe give him a fight against Michael Chiesa or something like that. So, maybe like a low impact grappler type would be a good fight for him. But that being said, yeah, it's just, it's tough to imagine him ever getting his way back to the top after this knockout loss in his recent string. But that being said, he's always a fun fighter to watch, so I hope they keep him around. Walter Walker submitted Junior Tafa with the heel hook in the first round. This was a very frustrating one for me. Not because of the finish. I mean, I picked Walter Walker rather on the preview pod. But hearing the commentators be so confused to a verbal tap was like really ridiculous. I mean, these guys all have fought before. Dom Cruz, DC. And it's like, that whenever you scream from a submission, that is a verbal tap. That's always been a rule. It's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You know what I mean? We just saw one last week in the heavyweight main event with Tybura and Spivak. When Spivak got that armbar, Tybura screamed and the ref stopped it. There was no controversy. You know what I mean? But Junior Tafa is a sore loser, so he made a big deal when he screamed after that heel hook. For Walter Walker, I mean, good job finishing the fight there. I love that he called out Justin After the fight, he said Tafa that Junior had been making fun of his brother, talking shit about his brother, so now he wants to fight his brother. I think that's a good fight to make. I think Justin is definitely better than Junior, and probably has a good chance of knocking out Walter Walker, but also just has the same amount of chance of getting taken down and submitted. So we'll see what happens. But solid win there for Walter. Josh Culibao versus Ricardo Ramos. I thought this was, robbery is a strong word, but it was just a little bit disappointing from Culibao because you did feel like, at least I felt like he certainly won the second round. He almost finished him. Third round, and he just got a little bit too overzealous in the first round and ended up getting taken down and getting his back taken for the rest of the round. But that third round, I felt like he did enough damage to win. But two of the judges did not see it that way and ended up giving the fight to Ricardo Ramos for what was essentially 4 minutes of control time in the whole fight. So kind of a frustrating fight to judge, honestly. But in the spots, like in the 10-9 scoring system, it's hard to argue against it. It really depends on how you score that third round. But that being said, I felt like Culibao did enough to win, and it sucks that he got that decision taken away from him. For Ricardo Ramos, I don't know, man. I feel like all the explosiveness is left out of him, and now he just has resulted in his grappling. I think maybe a case of somebody who was fed to the wolves too young, and now is starting to see burnout before he's even 30. But, I don't know. I don't want to write the guy off so quickly. We'll see what happens as he progresses throughout his career. But for Culibao, really needs to work on that takedown defense because it was like he was beating the shit out of Ramos on the feet and then would end up getting taken down and losing the rest of the round, and it was a frustrating performance to watch for sure. But I do love Culibao's striking style, and I'm really excited to see him get in there again. Casey O'Neill completely shut out Luana Santos. This is a fight that should have been easier to predict than it was. Santos has always had problems with the wrestling. O'Neill has always been a strong grappler. So really no surprise here that she was able to kind of just wash her out, and a good win to get back in the, or a good fight to get back in the win column for Casey O'Neill. Jack Jenkins beat the shit out of Herbert Burns. A fight that could have been stopped at a couple points, I think, in the first or second round. But Herbert was able to stay tough enough and get a takedown at certain points and just kind of lay there. For Jenkins, phenomenal combination work as we've come to expect from him. But that takedown defense, again, it's just tough, because when Herbert did get the takedown, he couldn't get up, and if he was able to scramble or work his way back to the feet, I know Burns is a very accomplished grappler, so it's no shame in getting held down by him. But yeah, he probably could have finished that fight in the second. If he was able to scramble up to his feet a little bit better. But that being said, still a phenomenal performance and an easy knockout in that third round when Herbert Burns just refuses to stand back up. This is like the second or third time that we've seen this from him when he's exhausted. It's hard to watch. I'll be surprised if he's not cut, and if he isn't, I will definitely be betting against him in his next fight. Tom Nolan versus Alex Reyes. I thought Nolan was going to be able to wash Reyes in this fight, but instead it went to the decision. Reyes was super tough. I don't know what the Reyes brothers have been doing, but they both have had... even though Alex came up with the loss in this last fight... Even though Alex came up with a loss in this last fight, both the Reyes brothers have... Their chins have looked a lot better since coming back after their layoffs and their losses. So I'm happy to see that. Hopefully Reyes gets another fight because he seems like a good guy and a tough fighter. But for Nolan, he was supposed to wash this guy out and instead won the unanimous decision. I'm starting to really question the favorite status of him every fight. Every fight he comes in, he's like a minus 10,000 or some shit, minus 1,000, minus 1,100. I think in this one he was minus 1,200. He certainly doesn't seem like that guy, It seems more to me like I'm going to finish you in the first round, or we're going to take this thing out, And, this is the first time he's gone to the decision like that, but that's the style that I get from him. I think he's a front runner, but he was able to win the fight, so, it is what it is, Even if he didn't get the crazy finish that he was looking for, he still ended up with that win bonus, so solid win there. Song Kanon versus Ricky Glenn. Man, I thought Ricky Glenn was going to get knocked out a few times in this fight, but he just stayed right there. Song got tired at a certain point, but any punch he landed had a great effect on Glenn. I mean, I don't know what to say. I think Glenn needs to really hang them up because at welterweight, it's just not going to be good for him there. He's so slow, even at 2 weight classes up from where he started. And then Jesus Santos Aguilar submitted Stuart Nickel in an awesome guillotine in a scramble after he was losing that fight. Turned it around with that guillotine and got the finish when Nickel ended up falling asleep. So, no arguments there. Phenomenal. Overall, it was a pretty solid card, honestly. I mean, I enjoyed it. I thought, there was a couple of cool finishes in there. The main event was very exciting, and, DDP pulled it out. I think you really can't deny him anymore. The guy, I mean, obviously he won the belt and defended it. Now he's cemented. But the guy is a very tough fighter to deal with, and he brings a lot of interesting looks and a lot of interesting tools to the table. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that his style looks so janky, because clearly it's giving his opponents a lot of fits. So that being said, let's move over to next week's card. We have Cannonier versus Borralho, and the I believe it's the Ultimate Fighter finale as well. Yeah, Ultimate Fighter finale too. I mean, who really gives a shit about the Ultimate Fighter, honestly? But, it is what it is. We're going to see what happens. That being said, the main event, I'm very excited for this matchup. Jared Cannonier versus Caio Borralho. This is a classic dynamic that we've seen in MMA many times before, where it is the aging vet fighting the young up-and-comer, the hungry up-and-comer. Now, as far as the styles play out, I think both guys present a lot of interesting questions to each other, and that's why I'm really pumped for this matchup, and I hope that the MMA media and the fans are going to garner as much interest in it as it deserves, because Cannonier is a very exciting fighter. He hits really hard. He has great leg kicks too. He has good takedown defense, and when he gets on top of people, he lands very devastating ground and pound. In his last fight, we saw him have some cardio issues, which we've never seen before, and also some durability issues in his last couple fights, which we haven't ever seen before. So it does kind of feel like he's starting to get to that point where he's over the hill. I think he's 42 now. No, he's just 40, but still. The dude's had a lot of fights. He's had a lot of years in the game. And he was somebody that I definitely thought could have challenged for the belt and won. He did end up fighting for the belt against Israel and lost. He lost to Robert Whittaker as well. He hasn't fought DDP. He beat Strickland, though, in a fight that I thought he clearly won. But it was a very close one regardless, because it is a Sean Strickland fight. But that being said, I think he poses a lot of problems to Borralho. Borralho is somebody who I'll tell you right now, I think I am going to pick Borralho in this matchup, but I don't think it's going to be a cakewalk. Borralho is somebody who is great everywhere. He has a great jiu-jitsu game. He has a great wrestling game. He has a great jab. He has great boxing. Pretty decent power in his hands. We saw him knock out Paul Craig not too long ago. I mean, who hasn't knocked out Paul Craig? But it was a solid showing from him. He's kind of somebody who can win the fight anywhere, and whenever he finds the avenue that he's better than his opponent in, he takes it and he runs with it, and he's really good at that. So, I mean, I personally am really excited for this matchup because I feel like Borralho can test Cannonier everywhere. He's going to test him in the striking. He's going to test him in the grappling for sure. Cannonier, if he shows up, should be able to defend the takedowns and land the heavier punches on the feet. But I can see Borralho kind of taking a volume approach to this fight, staying on the outside, popping out that jab, throwing those leg kicks, hitting the body, and taking the fight to the ground whenever he needs to, or whenever Cannonier crashes in. I think it's going to be a very exciting matchup, and I am leaning towards Caio Borralho here. I think the young gun can get it done. And honestly, I'm backing Borralho all the way to the top. I think the guy has a very awesome style, and he hasn't lost in a long time. and I think that's for a good reason. I think he's very smart when it comes to this fight game, and he knows not to take the risk if he doesn't have to, and he knows when to take the risk when it presents itself. So I like Borralho in this matchup. I think Cannonier is on the downturn. I think Borralho is on the up, and the momentum is certainly on Borralho's side, so I'm going to side with the Brazilian in the main event here. Co-main event, you got Angela Hill versus Tabitha Ricci, Baby Shark versus Angela Hill. This is a interesting fight too. I really am not sure who to pick because Tabitha Ricci is she's overperformed and underperformed, so she's kind of been inconsistent. But Angela Hill is somebody who is always going to show up. She's always going to land her knees to the body in the clinch. In her last fight, I think she got a submission for the first time that I can remember. Yeah, she got a submission in her last fight. It was her first submission on her record. So, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily call her a submission grappler at all, but she was able to find that rear naked choke in the last one. So, I mean, who knows? It might be there. But Ricci is very good on the ground. I expect if this fight stays on the feet, I expect Hill to have some more success with her jab, with her leg kicks, with her movement. And if it does crash into the clinch, she is very nasty in the clinch. So, I like Hill on the feet. I like Ricci on the ground. Not really sure who to pick, but I do feel like this fight's going to go to decision. I think both women are super tough. Hill especially is very hard to finish. I don't think Ricci's ever been finished that I can think of. Okay, so she got knocked out early in her career by Manon Fiorot at flyweight. Yeah, that makes sense. But, you know, I just don't really see... I don't think Angela is going to be able to finish her on the feet, but I can see her winning minutes and rounds of the fight for sure. Then the Ultimate Fighter finale at middleweight. I'm not even going to pretend like I've been watching this season. I don't think anybody has. I hope it's a good fight. Neil Magny versus Michael Morales. This has Neil Magny stopping the hype train written all over it, man. I don't know. I think Morales is a pretty good fighter for sure. He's a young dude. I think he's only like 20 or he's 25. But, you know, he just hasn't been... He's been fighting guys that he should smoke, like Max Griffin and Jake Matthews, and he hasn't. He's had close fights. He's had, 29-28s and stuff like that. But, obviously he is winning. He's, undefeated in the UFC. He beat Trevin Giles, which is a great W on his record. But I don't know, man. I'm just kind of feeling like Neil Magny might get the upset here. If the odds are crazy, I'm definitely going to take a stab at Magny. If it's anything more than like plus 250 or plus 300, I'll take a stab at Magny for sure. I just feel like he's the ultimate gatekeeper. So we'll see if Morales can make it through. But yeah, I'm excited for that matchup either way. I think Morales has really good boxing. Doesn't pull the trigger as much as I'd like him to. Magny, on the other hand, is a great wrestler, great wall installer, great clinch fighter in general, and I think he is going to be able to put some control time on Morales and make him uncomfortable. If Morales comes out and throws leg kicks, it's going to be a different story. It's probably going to be Morales to win that way if he can throw some leg kicks, if he can keep Neil Magny uncomfortable. I could see him having great success here, but I don't know. I just feel like Magny got that dog in him. You know what I mean? We'll see, though. Edmund Shabazian versus Gerald Mearshart. This is going to be a blowout on either side, right? This is going to be either Edmund Shabazian coming out and being so much faster and so much better than Gerald Mearshart on the feet and knocking him out, or Edmund Shabazian getting taken down by the much more experienced and much better grappler in Gerald Mearshart and getting submitted at some point in this fight. So I think the smart money is on the method of victory, alternate route, double chance, whatever they call it, where you can bet on a method of victory on either side. So I would put Shabazian by KO or Mearshart by submission. I think that's the move. I mean, it just makes all sense in the world to me. If not, maybe just put that the fight doesn't go the distance, because I think either guy should be able to finish the other one if they get their game working. Then you have Danny Silva versus Dennis Bazooka. Dennis Bazooka won against Connor Matthews in his last fight, his first W in the UFC that I can remember. Fights Danny Silva, who I'm not really too sure of, but hopefully that'll be a fun striking matchup. Zachary Reese is coming back against Jose Medina. That should be fun. Slaviclaus is fighting James Lontop. This should be a layup for Slaviclaus. Let's hope he gets this done. And then you got Josiah Nunez versus Jacqueline Cavalcanti. This should be fun because Josiah Nunez is so small and hits so hard. It's hilarious to see her in there. So I'm excited for that matchup. And then Wang Kong versus Victoria Leonardo. I know Leonardo. I'm not familiar with this Wang Kong, but she's 5-0. a victory over Wu Yanan on the regional scene, who's not a great fighter, but still, this is her UFC debut. We'll see how she does. You know, she came in off the road to UFC. Victoria Leonardo is certainly not a great fighter. She's been knocked out a couple times in here, but against good fighters, Natalia Silva, Gatto, and Manon Fiorot. But, and Aaron Blanchfield knocked her out, dude. Oh, man, if Aaron Blanchfield's knocking you out, I don't know. That's tough. But, you know, that being said, I mean, all the love in the world to Blanchfield, but she's just not a knockout fighter, you know? She's much more of a submission grappler. But, yeah, so hopefully that's a fun fight. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'm not too excited for much on this card besides Neil Magny and Caio Borralho getting their chance to, in Magny's case, close the gate on another contender, and Borralho's case, break through to the top 5. But that being said, I think it should be a pretty exciting fight night altogether. We'll see what happens, you know? Thank you so much for listening, y'all. We had a pretty solid run last week. And, you know, the week before that, we did 3-1. So, you know, we've been on a winning streak here at TKO, and hopefully we can keep the ball rolling. As far as the betting slip goes, I'm just going to take Borralho, and I'll take a stab at Hill and Magny if they're in good underdog spots. Thank you very much, y'all. Appreciate y'all listening, and you guys have a lovely day. Take it easy. Peace.